You ever walk out onto a piece of land that's been in your family since before the highway was paved, just looking for a little peace and quiet, and instead you find a brand new building you never asked for? I'm talking a full-blown, brick-columned, cedar-roof pavilion, sitting there arrogant as hell, with picnic tables lined up like soldiers and a sign that says members only. They thought because my uncle was sick, and because I was grieving, that I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd be too scared of their lawyers and their homeowners association fees to fight back. They were wrong. I didn't bring a lawyer to the first meeting. I brought a bulldozer. But to understand why it felt so good to hear that diesel engine roar, you have to understand where this started. It started with a phone call on a Wednesday morning that felt just like any other, until it wasn't. It was the estate attorney handling my Uncle Wyatt's affairs. Wyatt was the kind of man who didn't trust banks and thought the internet was a passing fad, but he loved the Texas Hill Country more than he loved breathing. He'd spent his last 2 years in a VA hospital, fighting a battle against cancer that he eventually lost, and while he was fighting for his life, his land, 15 acres of prime oak and cedar just outside of Austin, sat quiet. Or at least, that's what we thought. The attorney, a man with a voice like dry leaves, told me, "Caleb, he left it all to you. The land, the mineral rights, everything. Free and clear." I stood in my kitchen, staring at the coffee in my mug, feeling that heavy, hollow ache you get when the finality of death hits you. Land in Texas isn't just dirt, you understand? It's legacy. It's the sweat your grandfather dropped in the soil. It's the place you learned to shoot a rifle and drive a stick shift. Suddenly, I wasn't just a nephew mourning an uncle. I was the steward of his history. I drove out there the next morning. The sun was just breaking over the limestone hills, turning the sky that bruised purple and orange you only see in the west. I turned my old F-250 off the county road and onto the gravel track that led to Wyatt's property. The air smelled of juniper and dust, a smell that usually settles my nerves. But as I rolled down the window, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. At first, it was just a feeling. Then, I saw the tracks. Now, Uncle Wyatt hadn't driven a truck in 2 years. But the ruts cutting through the mud near the southern tree line weren't old. They were fresh, deep, and wide. These weren't pickup truck tracks. These were heavy machinery tracks. The kind that chew up the earth and don't apologize for it. I stopped the truck, grabbed the deed I'd tossed on the passenger seat, and stepped out. I followed the scars in the earth. Someone had cut a path through the brush, snapping saplings and tearing up the bluebonnets Wyatt used to refuse to mow. My chest got tight. I pushed through a thicket of cedar, walked about 50 yards, and then the trees just opened up. I stopped dead in my tracks. There, in a clearing that definitely hadn't been there 3 years ago, stood a structure that looked like it belonged in a resort magazine. Freshly poured concrete slab, stone columns wrapped in ivy, a massive outdoor kitchen with stainless steel grills, and flower beds bursting with petunias. And right in the front, a tasteful, forest green sign with gold lettering. Willow Creek Estates Recreational Pavilion, residents only. For a solid minute, I couldn't hear anything but the blood rushing in my ears. Willow Creek Estates was the subdivision next door, cookie-cutter mansions and manicured lawns that had sprung up 5 years ago. They had encroached on the quiet of the county, but now, they had physically encroached on my dirt. I walked up to the edge of the slab. I pulled out my phone and opened the county GIS map. I'm a general contractor by trade, so I know how to read a survey. The little blue dot on my phone screen, the one representing me, was sitting well inside my property line. Not inches, not feet. We were talking almost 12 yards inside the boundary. This wasn't an accident. You don't accidentally pour 1,000 square feet of concrete on the wrong side of a fence. This was theft. I didn't scream. I didn't start kicking the columns. I just felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my gut. I took a picture of the deed next to their members only sign, and then I called the number listed on the bottom of their little placard. Willow Creek Association, this is Brenda speaking. How can I help you make our community better today? Her voice was sweet, saccharine sweet, the kind of sweet that rots your teeth. Yeah, this is Caleb Mitchell, I said, keeping my voice low. I'm standing on my Uncle Wyatt's land, and I'm looking at a building I didn't build. I'm assuming you're the Brenda in charge. There was a pause. Not a confused pause. A calculating one. Oh, Mr. Mitchell, she said, her tone shifting from customer service to condescending schoolteacher. We were wondering when the estate would settle. Yes, Isn't the pavilion lovely? Your uncle gave us permission years ago. Verbal agreement. He loved seeing the families enjoy the outdoors. I looked at the fresh mulch. Brenda, my uncle has been in a coma or a hospital bed for 2 years. This wood still smells like the lumber yard. Unless he gave you permission from the ICU. You're lying. Excuse me. Her voice turned icy. We have utilized that space for a long time. It's a community asset. And frankly, considering the state of that property, it was basically abandoned. We improved it. You should be thanking us for the property value bump. I'm giving you 10 days, I said, cutting her off. 10 days to remove it, or I remove it for you. You wouldn't dare, she laughed, a dry, brittle sound. That is a $100,000 structure. You touch a brick, and we'll sue you into poverty. We have lawyers, Mr. Mitchell. Expensive ones. Do you? She hung up before I could answer. I stood there in the silence of the woods, looking at this monument to entitlement. She wasn't scared. She was annoyed. She treated me like a gardener who missed a spot, not a landowner defending his rights. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey I didn't drink and a stack of papers I couldn't stop reading. I realized Brenda wasn't just confident. She was comfortable. You don't build on someone else's land unless you are absolutely certain they won't fight back. They had banked on Wyatt dying and his heir being too overwhelmed to check the survey markers. The next morning, I went to see Elias Thorne. Elias is the kind of lawyer you want in a property dispute in Texas. His office smells like old leather and pipe tobacco, and he looks like he was carved out of an oak tree. He's been practicing law since before I was born. I laid it all out for him. The deed, the GIS screenshots, the conversation with Brenda. Elias looked at the papers over the rim of his glasses, humming a low tune. They're bold, he muttered. Stupid, but bold. They're relying on adverse possession, maybe? Or just plain intimidation. They think they can bully you into selling that strip for pennies. I don't want to sell, Elias. I want it gone. Then we send a formal demand, Elias said, firing up a computer that looked like it ran on coal. Cease and desist. Demand for restoration of property. We give them the statutory notice. If they don't comply, under Texas Property Code, unauthorized structures on private land become debris. Debris, I repeated. I like that word. But listen to me, Caleb, Elias warned, pointing a pen at me. Brenda Vance is the HOA president, right? I know the type. She won't fold. She's going to make your life hell before she admits she's wrong. Expect retaliation. Elias was a prophet. 2 days after the letter went out, the attack started. It wasn't a lawsuit, not yet. It was pettiness weaponized. First, a county truck showed up. A guy in a neon vest told me he had reports of an unsecured septic breach on my land. There is no septic tank on that part of the property, but I had to let him inspect it, wasting my whole morning. Then came the trash. I drove out to check on the land and found 20 bags of garbage dumped right along my fence line. Fast food wrappers, diapers, rot. And conveniently, 10 minutes later, a code enforcement officer happened to drive by and cite me for illegal dumping. Then the letters started arriving. Not from the HOA, but from concerned citizens, threatening to report me for everything from fire hazards to noise violations. They were trying to bleed me dry, emotionally and financially. They wanted me to look at that land and see nothing but a headache, so I'd sign it over just to make the pain stop. I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, staring at a pile of garbage I hadn't created, feeling about as low as a snake's belly when I saw it. Taped to the back of my gate post, hidden where you wouldn't see it unless you were looking for a latch, was a manila envelope. No postage. I opened it. Inside was a cheap USB drive and a sticky note that just said, "Watch this." I drove to the library to plug it in. Wasn't about to risk my home computer. There were 3 files. I clicked the first one. It was a video, shaky, shot from a cell phone hidden under a desk or in a pocket. It showed the inside of an office, the HOA office. I recognized Brenda immediately. She was standing over a young guy who was typing frantically at a computer. "Just move the line, Kevin." Brenda's voice came through, tinny but clear. "The county GIS hasn't been updated in a decade. Just submit the correction request. Say it was a surveying error from the 90s. But Mrs. Vance," the kid stammered. "That's fraud. If the owner checks." "The owner is a dead man walking," Brenda snapped. "And the nephew is a broke mechanic. He won't check. Move the line 20 feet south. That covers the pavilion. Once the map updates, it's our word against his." My jaw hit the floor. This wasn't just trespassing. This was a conspiracy. They were actively manipulating county records to steal my land. The second file was a spreadsheet titled Expansion Targets. My land was highlighted in yellow. Next to it was a note. Acquisition via attrition. Maximum pressure. They had a playbook. I wasn't a neighbor to them. I was an obstacle. I pulled the USB drive out and felt a smile creep across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who just realized he's holding a royal flush while the other guy is bluffing with a pair of twos. I went back to Elias. When he watched the video, he actually laughed. A dry, dusty sound. Well, he said, that changes the weather, doesn't it? Can we use it? Oh, we can use it, Elias said. But first, we need to make sure the physical reality matches the legal one. You need a surveyor. A real one. Not one on their payroll. We hired Old Man Miller. He's been surveying this county since the dirt was invented. He doesn't use GPS. He uses theodolites and iron pins and benchmarks from 1920. We went out there, and he spent 3 hours cutting lines. When he was done, he hammered a bright orange stake into the ground. That's your corner, Miller said, spitting tobacco juice. He pointed to the pavilion. That pretty little kitchen, it's sitting 12 feet, 4 inches on your side. And that walkway? Entirely yours. Will you testify to that? Son, I'd testify to it against the Pope. Now I had the deed, the real survey, and the evidence of fraud. It was time to go to work. But I didn't want to just sue them. A lawsuit takes years. Brenda would drag it out, spending the HOA's money while I went broke. I needed to end this. I needed a decisive blow. I called my buddy Big Red. Red owns an excavation company. He's got a D6 bulldozer that he treats like a pet dog. Red, I said, how do you feel about a demolition job? What are we wrecking? A symbol of oppression, I said. My favorite kind. When? Tomorrow morning. Sunrise. But before the dozers rolled, I had one stop to make. The HOA was holding an emergency member meeting that night to discuss the threat to community assets, meaning me. I walked into their clubhouse at 7 p.m. The room was packed. Brenda was up at the podium, showing a slideshow of the pavilion, talking about preserving our heritage. She looked up when I walked in, and the room went dead silent. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice dripping with venom. This is a private meeting. I'm not here to stay, I said, walking straight up the center aisle. I didn't look at the angry faces. I looked right at her. I just wanted to return something you lost. I slapped a copy of the real survey map onto the table in front of her. Then, I pulled out a flash drive, a copy of the one the whistleblower gave me. And this, I said, loud enough for the back row to hear, is a copy of the video where you ordered your intern to commit felony fraud by altering county maps. I've already sent the original to the district attorney. Brenda went pale. Not white, gray. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. You have until sunrise, I said to the room. Get your personal belongings out of that pavilion. Because at 6 a.m., I'm cleaning up the debris on my land. I walked out. Nobody stopped me. I could feel the panic erupting behind me like a shook soda can. I was at the gate at 5:30 a.m. Big Red was already there, the bulldozer idling on the trailer, the diesel exhaust puffing white in the cool morning air. It sounded like a dragon clearing its throat. You got the legal clearance? Red asked, sipping coffee from a thermos. Signed by the judge yesterday, I said, patting my jacket pocket. Elias had worked a miracle and got a declaratory judgment stating the structure was abandoned property. We unloaded the dozer. The tracks clanked and groaned as Red tracked it off the trailer. We rolled down the fire road, crushing the underbrush, until we hit the clearing. They were waiting for us. Brenda was there, standing right in front of the pavilion. She had about 10 people with her, board members, mostly, linking arms like they were protesting a nuclear war. She was wearing a beige pantsuit and heels, standing in the mud, looking desperate. Stop, she screamed as the dozer rounded the bend. You cannot do this. This is criminal destruction. Red idled the machine down, the engine chugging. I hopped off the running board and walked up to the line. Move, Brenda, I said. No, she shrieked. She was shaking, her hair coming undone. We will sue you. We will own you. This is our property. It's not, I said, calm as a frozen pond. It never was. And now, the county knows you tried to steal it. You're not fighting for a pavilion anymore, Brenda. You're fighting for your freedom. Now move, before you get hurt. She didn't move. She stood there, defiantly, chin up. Red revved the engine. He didn't move the tracks forward, he just dropped the blade. Clang. The sound of that heavy steel blade hitting the earth sent a shockwave through the ground. It vibrated right up through the soles of everyone standing there. And then, it happened. The vibration was so strong, and Brenda was so rigid, that the heel of her right shoe, one of those expensive designer stilettos, snapped clean off. She stumbled, arms flailing, and went down right in a patch of mud. The line of human shields broke instantly. The board members scrambled back, realizing that a D6 bulldozer doesn't care about your HOA bylaws. Brenda was left sitting in the muck, one shoe broken, staring up at the massive yellow blade of justice. "Get her out of there," I told one of the board members. Two guys ran out, grabbed her by the arms, and dragged her clear. She was screaming, crying, yelling about how she was the victim, but nobody was listening. I looked at Red. I gave him the thumbs up. Red didn't hesitate. He throttled up. Black smoke poured out of the stack. The dozer lurched forward. The blade hit the first brick column. It didn't even slow down. The bricks exploded into dust. The roof shuddered, groaned, and then collapsed with a sound like a thunderclap. Red reversed, turned, and hit the side. The outdoor kitchen crumbled like it was made of crackers. The stainless steel grill twisted into a metal pretzel. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to erase what they had spent months building on stolen land. When Red was done, there was nothing left but a pile of rubble and timber. I stood there watching the dust settle. It wasn't just destruction. It was restoration. The land was messy, sure, but it was mine again. Just as Red was shutting down the engine, the flashing lights showed up. Sheriff's deputies. Brenda, mud-caked and hysterical, ran toward them. "Arrest him," she screamed, pointing at me. "He destroyed everything. He assaulted me." The deputy, a guy named Miller, no relation to the surveyor, looked at the pile of rubble, then at me. I handed him the court order and the survey. He read it. He looked at Brenda. "Ma'am," Deputy Miller said, "did you build this structure on this man's property?" "It's community property," she insisted. The map you altered?" I interjected. The deputy looked at her. "Ma'am, I have a warrant here." Brenda stopped screaming. "What?" "District Attorney sent it over this morning," Miller said, pulling out a pair of cuffs. "Fraud, tampering with public records, and filing false instruments. Brenda Vance, you're under arrest." The silence in that clearing was absolute. The only sound was the click-click of the handcuffs. Brenda didn't fight. She just wilted. The arrogance evaporated, leaving just a scared, muddy woman who thought the rules didn't apply to her. They put her in the back of the cruiser. As they drove away, I saw the other board members quietly walking back to their houses, heads down. They knew the party was over. The lawsuit they filed against me, dismissed with prejudice before it even hit a jury. The judge took one look at the fraud evidence and threw it out. In fact, he ordered the HOA to pay for the removal of the debris and my legal fees. That six-figure settlement? That came from their insurance company settling my countersuit for malicious prosecution and trespassing. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to make sure nobody ever forgot. A few weeks later, after the rubble was cleared and the land was smoothed back over, I called Red back out. We poured a small concrete pad right on the property line. I had a sign made. A big one. Steel, welded deep into the ground, so you'd need a tank to remove it. It faces the HOA. It reads, "Private property, not a park, not a pavilion. In memory of the most expensive shed in county history. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I spend a lot of time out there now. I planted wildflowers where the concrete slab used to be, bluebonnets, just like Uncle Wyatt loved. Sometimes, I see the neighbors walking their dogs along the perimeter. They stop and read the sign. Some of them shake their heads. Some of them laugh. Brenda moved away a few months later. Plead guilty to a lesser charge to avoid jail time. But she's barred from ever serving on an HOA board again. The moral of the story? I guess it's simple. Love your neighbor, sure, but verify your property lines. And if you ever find someone building a castle on your dirt, don't wait for permission to knock it down. Because the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil, or in this case, an HOA, is for good men to leave their bulldozers parked. So, tell me in the comments, was I too harsh? Should I have tried to negotiate? Or did Brenda get exactly what she ordered? I read every comment, so let me know what you think. And folks, check your deeds. You never know who's looking at your land with greedy eyes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the property line. Stay free out there.